Good evening and welcome. Tonight we have a great presentation by Andy Mariani, Past and Extant Farms in the Santa Clara Valley. So because we're going to record this presentation, I'd like to ask you to please turn off your video and your microphone. And if you have any questions, save those until the end and use chat, and I'll read the questions and Andy will answer them.
Do we turn it up here or do you turn it up there?
I don't know if we.
Next slide, please. Today's presentation is sponsored by the Saratoga Historical Foundation. The mission of the Saratoga Historical Foundation is to preserve the rich history of Saratoga for the education and enjoyment of the community. I'd like to invite you to the historical park where you can enjoy our wonderful 1904 building, which houses the history of Saratoga from the Ohlone Indians till about the 1940s. We also have on site a wonderful 1850s pioneer cottage, one-room schoolhouse, and soon we'll have a blacksmith exhibit. So for more information, for events and other things, please go up to www.saratogahistory.com. We do have some upcoming events. On March 14th at 7 o'clock, we will have Robin Chapman talk about the Valley of Heart's Delight from Tales Around the Bay Area. We hope you'll join us at the Saratoga Foothill Club. We also have a blacksmith exhibit opening in April at the Saratoga Historical Park. The Blossom Festival is coming on either March or April. So again, please check www.saratogahistory.com for these events. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to introduce Andy Mariani. He was educated in both horticultural and behavioral science, grew up in Cupertino, California, continues to grow fruit on his family farm in Morgan Hill. He grows specialty fruit with a national reputation for quality, and he's a wonderful speaker. Now I'll turn it over to Andy.
Hi, Annette and everyone. Thank you for having me. My talk tonight is the Past and Extant Farms of the Santa Clara Valley. So we're gonna get started with the slideshow. So this first photo is actually an orchard that I have on the east side of Morgan Hill. It's a fairly young orchard of plums, and you see in the background is a local prominent landmark called El Toro. The next photo is that same El Toro. It's a sepia tone photo, circa 1900, and you can see that there's orchards right at the foot of El Toro. Of course, they are no longer there; they're all houses. So these two photos, the juxtaposition of these two photos, kind of best describes what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to read this because I want to read it accurately, and I hope you don't mind and follow along. The talk will cover a brief history of farming in the Santa Clara Valley, how it came to be, how it was, and factors contributing to its virtual disappearance as the valley transitioned to the modern metropolis of Silicon Valley. It will consist of an historical analysis coupled with personal stories, observation, and narratives. Lastly, I will profile several family farms still in the area and that still exist, and comment on how they are facing the challenges of an increasingly urbanized landscape.
Well, you're gonna have to go because you can't hear it. I don't understand. I can't get it to come.
Are you having a hard time hearing me, Annette?
I hear you.
Okay.
I think somebody didn't turn off their microphone.
Okay. Well, this is, I think it's a poster of it's called Sunny Garden of California, Santa Clara County, California. When John Muir visited the valley in the 1800s, he just described it in superlatives. He felt it was the most beautiful and fertile of all the valleys in California. Anne Marie Todd describe three different things of why the valley is set apart from others. It's the beauty, or especially during the blossoms. It's its bounty, or the sheer volume of fruit that was produced by this area, and also the superior quality of the fruit that came from this area. It was the beauty of the place was celebrated by events like the Saratoga Blossom Festival. This is an old photo. I could not read the date, but I believe it's 1912. You can see it's mostly horse and carriage. The mode of transportation has changed over the years, obviously. I remember when I was I think I was in the 6th grade going to school in Cupertino, and a helicopter landed in our schoolyard, and the queen of the Blossom Festival stepped out and said hi, and she was taking a tour and landing in other areas to promote the Blossom Festival, and also taking in the beautiful sight of the entire valley in bloom. So now I jump to the factors that contribute to the spread of orchards and family farms in the area. The first point is the landscape, natural features. Some people don't realize this, but the Santa Clara Valley is not a typical valley that's formed by a river like the Salinas Valley or the San Joaquin Valley. It's actually a natural depression between two mountain ranges, the Diablo on the east and the Santa Cruz Mountains on the right. It's also bounded by several earthquake faults, the Hayward and the Calaveras on the east, and of course the San Andreas on the west. And it's likely that the seismic activity of these two faults actually formed the valley. The soils here are very good, but they're not quite as good as, say, the Salinas Valley, which is presumably the richest, most productive agricultural valley in the whole world. But the soil is highly variable. There's some good soils and some not so good soils, but they were okay for growing fruit trees. The water, we had a great water table, a aquifer that lay underneath the soil, and in recent years it's been depleted a little bit, but it's still there. But I think what sets the valley apart is its climate. Sometimes it's referred to as the Goldilocks climate. That means it's not too hot and not too cold. It's tempered by the Pacific and the San Francisco Bay. So in the Central Valley, for example, the summer temperatures are sometimes oppressively hot, and their nighttime temperatures during the summer can still stay up in the 80s. And in the Santa Clara Valley, the temperatures go down at night. It allows the fruit to stay on a lot longer and develop full flavor, which really is the reason why it produces such excellent quality. Now, the gold rush was a major factor in bringing people to the Santa Clara Valley eventually. The gold seekers, once the gold was gone, they had to find kind of an honest way of living. And so often, a lot of them did end up in the Santa Clara Valley. A couple of them, Louis Pellier, who introduced the French prune to the state of California and Santa Clara Valley, and I'm trying to think of his name now. Oh well, I'll pass that up. Henry Coe. Henry Coe, he was the first one to use sulfur in drying. They were both veterans of the gold rush and former gold seekers. California became a state right away. The gold rush started in 1849, and California statehood was in 1850. The major event that happened was the subdivision of the Spanish and Mexican land grant holdings. At one time, the Santa Clara Valley was just a few very large tracts of land that were usually Mexican land grants. And what happened was during statehood, the states were organized into counties, and the counties started leveling property tax, and also these boundaries were kind of loosely drawn. They were contested. Oftentimes there were squatters, and so the people that held these large tracts of land, they just decided to start selling them off in small parcels. to avoid taxes and to kind of resolve things. The other factor was immigration, and not just the people from the gold rush, but they were coming from all over. They're coming from the Eastern US, they were coming from Europe and also Asia. Now, at that time, the major fruit crop was wine grapes, and the Santa Clara Valley was the largest grower of wine grapes in the entire West Coast. Now, there was some diseases that entered into the scene. Phylloxera is a root louse that devastated a lot of the vineyards in the late 1800s, and it took a couple of decades for them to develop resistant rootstocks to kind of take care of that problem. Prohibition was also a major hindrance to growing fruit, and probably one of the reasons why people switched from growing grapes to growing tree fruits. However, the Santa Clara Valley, because of its grape growing tradition, did not fare extremely badly during Prohibition. People like Paul Masson, he survived by growing and producing Sacramento wines, whereas there was a lot of bootlegging going on. There was the Prohibition, or the 18th Amendment, and then there was the Volstead Act, which was supposed to administer Prohibition. Well, that was loosely administered, especially in the Santa Clara Valley, and it had the reputation of being the wettest dry county in the entire nation at that time. It was not just bootlegging, but also moonshining. Some old timers used to tell me in the Morgan Hill area, which was out in the boonies at that time, there were stills almost at every farm, and they were distilling spirits. The local constable in Morgan Hill was actually friends to the moonshiners, and he would warn them to hide their stills when the federal agents came around. Now, the railroads were a major influence on the development of California in general and Santa Clara Valley in particular. The Transcontinental Railroad was completed in, I believe, 1869, and there was a lot of trunk lines that were laid. The railroads invested a tremendous amount in the infrastructure, and they wanted to promote the settlement of California in general. And they're the ones actually that originated the epithet, the Valley of Heart's Delight, because they wanted to attract people to the Santa Clara Valley. Now, the 8th point here is booster literature, and I'll illustrate that with the next slide. It's not moving. It's not moving. There we go. Okay, this is called a Colin. This was kind of a, I think it was an announcement, maybe it was a brochure or handbill, and it was produced for the people in the East Coast and in the Midwest. And this was in 1901. It extolled the merits of moving to Morgan Hill. It was put out by, as you can see, the Southern Pacific Company, which is a railroad, and the Board of Trade of Morgan Hill, which would be translated today would probably be the Chamber of Commerce. Some of the things that they talk about here is that it has a abundant rainfall, beautiful climate, and fantastic soil. The land was sold at anywhere from $25 to $100 an acre. It also advertised the fact that there was 3 churches, 1 good schoolhouse, and no saloons. Next. Okay, now we're going to talk about the drying industry that developed. Now, there was so much fruit being produced, and you couldn't sell it fresh because there was no system of, there was no refrigeration, there was no system of transportation. I mean, the railroads were there, but there was really no system of transportation, certainly not the national system of roads that we have now to transport fresh fruit to the market. So the whole idea was, with so much fruitage, they had to find a way to convert it into more durable form so it could be sold later on. And this is a fruit drying yard from the Campbell Growers Union. I believe today this is where the prune yard is now. They developed some new innovations like lye dipping the prunes to allow them to dry faster. And of course, Henry Coe developed the process of sulfuring apricots to develop a better apricot, quicker drying, and retained its color. So this dry fruit was packed in 25-pound cases and shipped all over the world. And that's how the Santa Clara Valley got its reputation as being the breadbasket of the world. Those 25-pound cases had labels on them that said Santa Clara prunes or Santa Clara dried apricots. Now to the canning industry. These are actually canning labels that would fit around a 14-ounce can. And the canning industry began probably in the late 1800s. They were done in small batches, and they later on they mechanized so that they would be able to do a lot more volume. The first label is a beautiful label, a Mount Hamilton brand, and it shows the local landmark. And however, the canning industry was very kind of male dominated, if you will. The women were the ones that did all the peeling and the pitting and the slicing and packing into the cans. The men did the heavy lifting, and they were the management people. There was no, during the harvest, they worked 12 hours. There was no overtime. There was no guaranteed minimum wage. Oftentimes the fruit was the people were paid on a piece rate basis, which means that they were paid based on how much they produced. And so some people that were fast made a fairly good wage. The other ones did not even make minimum wage. So it was kind of hard. And then it was a very busy time during the harvest season, but afterwards they were just laid off and they wouldn't be able to work again until the following summer. Now, one exception to this is this label that's down below. It's you can see that it's a label, the honeysuckle brand, and it's the women's Fruit Preserving Association. It was one exception to the rule about a male-dominated industry. It was owned and run by women. So a good story there. Different lifestyle. Growing up in the Santa Clara Valley, I had a different lifestyle than I do now. The farmers lived where they worked. Now I know this is kind of coming back with telecommuting, but you had your ranch house or your farmhouse at the ranch where the orchard was, and that's where you lived and worked. Entire families worked on the farm. There was usually the housewives stayed on the farm and worked along with their husbands on the farm. Children were expected to work there as well during the summer and even after school. I remember my dad used to say, he was kind of his own motivational speaker in his day, kind of a Tony Robbins. He'd say, if you don't work, you don't eat. So that was kind of the mantra then. Also, the farms were often self-sufficient or nearly so. There was a lot of survival skills that my parents brought over from Europe. They were immigrants from Europe, and my dad knew how to butcher animals. We had chickens for eggs. We had rabbits. We had pigeons. We had a goat for milk. My mom milked a goat, and my brother and I were raised on goat's milk. She also made using the tallow from the animals. She would make a laundry soap. My dad would prepare olives. He could cure olives. He could salt fish. He made his own wine and actually made some of his own grappa. These unfortunately all these survival skills have been lost in one generation, and I still have not been able to master the TV remote yet. So all of those fantastic skills are gone. Now, this fourth point, I want to just give you a background of our family. When we were in Europe, and my parents grew up between the First World War and the Second World War during the Depression, but also it was a feudal system where you could not own your own land. The land was either owned by the Catholic Church or it was owned by a rich feudal lord. And so my father's uncles preceded us to the Santa Clara Valley, and he wrote back to my father. They said that, you know, there's a lot of good land here. You can work it, and actually you can even own it. And so that was my dad's incentive to come over. He came over on his own, left his wife and 2 children. In 5 years, he was able to purchase a 5-acre, bring his family over, and also purchase a 5-acre orchard of apricots in Cupertino. Now, I think somebody like Jefferson, who espoused the individually owned farms and the Jefferson ideal of the yeoman farmer, would be really proud of the Santa Clara Valley, because it was really made up mostly of small farms individually owned by freeholders. They're called freeholders, people that own their own land. Now, this was kind of a Eurocentric version of the American dream, because the local Asians they suffered from tremendous injustices. There were laws on the books that prevented them from the first generation, the Issei generation of Japanese. They could not own their own land, and they could not even enter into short-term leases. So basically, they were relegated to doing sharecropping. Then there was the internment camps during World War II. Now, some of their kind neighbors would try to hold on to their land and their personal property, so when they got back, they had something left. Others actually took advantage of the situation and entered into long-term leases with the land, and a lot of the Japanese especially had nothing when they came back. I know my uncle Paul Mariani, who owned the dry fruit packing house in Cupertino, hired several families of Japanese when they returned from the camps, and they became lifelong friends and loyal employees. We had an older home in the back of our farmhouse, and we provided housing for a Japanese family of 7. And the head of the household of the Mitsunagas, he was a gardener, so he was an independent contractor, and he was able to make enough money in a few years to buy his own tract home for his children. I titled this "Nostalgia Isn't What It Used to Be." Stephanie Coons cautions of our falling into the nostalgia trap. Nostalgia trap is something that you know, we tend to romanticize the past, and it colors our perception of not only the past but also the present and sometimes the future. So my cautionary note here is that the good old days were not so perfect. I mean, we used to use a lot of pesticides that were dangerous. There was something called arsenic of lead, and that doesn't sound very good. We had really strong toxic chemicals like parathion. We had DDT, which persisted in the soil for a long time. We also exploited the water, and we reduced our water table quite significantly during the time that the orchards were being grown. There's certainly a lack of sanitation and food safety, unlike there is today. There was some exploitation of labor. I think it started from the top down. The canners would offer a price for a commodity, and it usually was low. And because of that, the farmer indirectly had to lower the wages of the say the harvest crews, because they couldn't make it otherwise. And then, of course, we touched on this, the discrimination of women and minorities. I'm having some trouble with the microphone. It's not you. Okay. Bulldozing the orchards. This was a common sight later on, usually from about the late 50s onward. So what happened? You know, Silicon Valley, I guess, happened. They were bulldozing the orchards and replacing them with developments. come this isn't going up there? There we go. Okay, factors contributing to the demise of the orchards and the family farms. There was a post-World War II housing boom. A lot of military people were going through the Bay Area to go to the Pacific Theater, and they liked it. And when they came back, oftentimes they settled here, particularly in the Santa Clara Valley, where Moffett Field was nearby. Then the rise and spread of the high-tech firms. Of course, they were beginning already, even in the early 50s. And there's a move. There was a lot of booster promotion by something called the Progress Committee. They were made up of real estate developers and real estate people, developers, and people that wanted to see the sleepy little canning town of San Jose become a metropolis. There was an aggressive expansionist approach by the city of San Jose. I remember reading where John Steinbeck, when he came back to Salinas after several years, he said the city has spread like crabgrass up to the foothills. And I think it's even more fitting in the Santa Clara Valley because of this practice of strip annexation. You'd annex along a transportation route, and what would do is it was tear the fabric of the agricultural landscape. So you'd have places like you'd have an orchard somewhere, and then right next to it there would be a housing development, and right next to there'd be a nascent gas station or something like that. It made it very farm unfriendly. And one of the examples I would like to share with you is in Saratoga itself. There was a 10-acre apricot orchard that was kind of surrounded by development, and each harvest time the grower would call the city of Saratoga and be enraged by the kids there in the neighborhood. They were driving their mini bikes and racing through the orchard and having apricot fights and things like that. Eventually that whole thing was resolved when the city actually bought that land and developed it into a park, and now it's, of course, Kevin Moran Park. Another factor was the aging rural population. A lot of the old farmers were starting to age. They had to make a decision whether they were going to stay there, move on to some other place, sell out. A lot of the children of the farmers were not willing to stay on the farm, and they wanted to move to the city to get better jobs. A lot of the orchard trees were aging. Some of them were 50, 60 years old, and they're starting to decline. And so you had to make a choice of whether you wanted to pull them out and start all over, either somewhere else or replant. Because it was a monoculture of basically apricots and prunes, there were a lot of diseases that came in that were hard to control. And then, of course, climate change. Even as early as the 1950s, there was some studies done where the night temperatures were fairly warm, and we had a hard time getting cherry crops because cherries require a certain amount of winter chill. And with all the development, the pavement and the chimneys and the street lights and the exhaust and all those kind of things were factors in increasing the amount of temperature during the winter nights. And if you didn't get enough chill, you weren't going to get a crop. So cherries, we still have problems trying to get crops in cherries. The next point was that both the drying and canning industry declined. Drying simply because there were no orchards left, or very few orchards left. So drying was always part of the orchard site. Canning, they lasted a little bit longer because the canning industry was well established, and they were actually bringing in fruit and vegetables from the Central Valley to can here. But again, the appeal of canned fruit was declining because we at that time we had a lot of refrigeration, and we were able to buy more fresh fruit. So the canning was not as much in demand. And then the last point, it's a kind of a minor point, the acquisition of local companies by larger corporations, primarily the wineries. I don't know if some of you probably remembered Parmesan champagne cellars there on Saratoga Avenue. Well, it was sold to Seagram, and then later it changed hands several times. And now I don't think Parmesan even has a label for wines anymore. I think they make some brandies, but it's no longer. None of the grapes come from the Santa Clara Valley. The same is true with Mirasu. Mirasu is also owned by something called a wine group. It's a conglomerate, and they do have some wines that are produced under that label, but it's not Santa Clara Valley grapes. And also the Almaden Vineyards, I think that is owned by Gallo, and they specialize in boxed wines under the Almaden label. So that's where those wineries went. Did I miss something? I think I did. No. Okay. I'm not sure if that's what I want there. Let me just jump again. Yeah, there's something missing. We have a slide missing. Let me just tell you what it is. I'm not sure where it went, but I'm profiling several of the farms that still exist in the Santa Clara Valley, and some of the reasons why they're still here. One of them is the C.J. Olson Cherries in Sunnyvale. Now their big fruit stand is closed. That was a separate business. Charlie Olson, who's a friend of mine, he was actually struggling mightily when he was just farming. But later on, he was able to sell some of his land and also lease a long-term lease for I don't know, apartments and a shopping center, and so he was able to get money from that to help subsidize his farm. They have they also take care of the Sunnyvale Heritage Orchard there, and they're able to sell fresh apricots there, and also they have a little stand where they have chocolate covered apricots, jams, and things like that. I want to make a distinction between dirt farming or dirt farmer and a gentleman farmer. And what I mean by that is a dirt farmer, his only means of livelihood is his farm. And a gentleman farmer has other ways, he has other sources of revenue, and he's using farming as a hobby, as a tax shelter, or whatever. He doesn't need that income to survive. So in the case of Charlie Olson, he was a dirt farmer, but now he's more of a gentleman farmer. There are others like the Novakovich orchards in Saratoga. That's a small family farm. The mother is still there, and the two brothers help operate. They have because they do a lot of the work themselves. They don't have a lot of costs involved, and they have a very, very loyal customer base, and they have great quality. And they do a lot of value-added products, which is another point I make, where they're making jams and dried fruit and chocolate-covered fruit and that sort of thing. They have their own fruit stand. Some of us do farmers markets. Sometimes we have websites for online ordering. We have specialty products and developing niche markets where you have a specialty and you have a market for that. And then these terms are kind of very close together. Agritourism and agritainment. What you're doing there is you're not selling the goods so much as you're selling an experience. So, let me continue talking. So I didn't go through the rest of the farms. There's besides Novakovich orchards, there is Guglielmo Winery. And they started the grandfather, Emil Guglielmo, was he was actually a weekend farmer. He lived in San Francisco, and he'd come down to Morgan Hill to attend his vineyards and produce wine. And he also was selling during Prohibition. He was also selling wine. But I talked to George Guglielmo, who is the oldest brother and a good friend of mine, and he said that when they started. When he went to college, there was only 200 bonded wineries in California, and now there's 5,000. So there's a lot of competition now. So they have to do things other than just produce wine. In the past, the grandfathers just produced jug wines, and now they're into premium wines. They have different labels. They're producing wines for other people. They have an event coordinator and event center. So they do a lot of things like weddings and concerts and things like that. And George mentioned that. He said if he didn't have that, and if he was just selling wine, he would have been out of business. So these are the strategies we use to try and adapt to an urban environment. The next one is Spade and Plow, and these people I really admire. It's Father Mike and two sons, Sam and Nick, and they are actually leasing some land in the Gilroy area, and they are organic, and they're planting primarily vegetables. Vegetables are a little more intensive, and you can probably get more income per acre from that. They have a CSA program, which is those weekly deliveries of boxes. They also go to farmers markets, and they have a great reputation for the quality of their produce. And that's critical. They also have high-end markets. They sell to restaurants and that sort of thing. Now I think now the last one I want to profile is my own, because I know the most about my own farm. Okay, this is actually just the entrance sign of Andy's Orchard. Well, let me just go back to that. When we moved here from Cupertino in 1958, and there's about 25 farms around us, small family farms, and they're mainly growing apricots and prunes. Some were growing walnuts, and they're all gone now. We're the last ones. My brother and I look at each other and we say, God, what did we do? I mean, we didn't know any better, I guess, but we did change with the times. We started doing just dried fruit at one time. We're in the drying business, and that helped us along. And now now we grow more than just apricots and prunes. We grow cherries. We pulled out all our prunes and grow cherries. Probably not the best decision, because they're not producing as well as they could. But we also moved toward we have a retail farm stand on our ranch, and we decided to start growing other varieties of fruit also, like peaches and nectarines and market plums and that sort of thing. So brandy. This is this slide is the label brandy. Now we developed a nice label, and we put labels on all our fruits, and our label means something to a lot of people. It means quality. And so if your label is identified with quality, it's easier to sell your product. And we have people that have seen our fruit and our label, and they call us and they say, we want that Andy's Orchard fruit. Then we also go to farmers markets. This is one in Santa Monica. We go all the way down to Santa Monica. It's a very profitable journey. In our van, we probably 95% of our fruit that goes down there is already pre-sold. It's sold to the high-end markets, hotels and restaurants. And even we have markets for secondary fruit, which is fruit that's slightly blemished. They make jam, preserves out of it. They make ice cream out of it. They make beer out of it. So we're able to sell everything at good prices. Then we have events as well. This is just a sign that says fruit tasting. Here's a fruit tasting event here. We have these about 4 times in the summer. Usually the first one is on Father's Day for cherries, and they're well attended. We get upwards of 500, 600 people at a time. And also in connection with the fruit tasting, we have an orchard tour. We have the farm itself and an orchard tour, and people can take buckets with them and also do a little bit of U-Pit. So again, we're selling an experience. It's profitable for us to do this. And besides just straight production agriculture, where you're just producing a product and selling it, you have to go into some of these other things in order to get additional income. Here's another scene from one of our tours. They're at the dry yard, and the lady there, Nancy Garrison, who used to be a farm advisor and a master gardener here and locally, she's talking about the fruit drying. Okay, now we talked about dried apricots being a commodity that was sold all over the world. Now, because it's so rare, there's very few people that are growing Blenheim apricots and drying them anymore, that all of a sudden it becomes a specialty product. And so if you put it in the correct packaging, beautiful packaging, and we have on the back side of this box, there's a label that describes how we dry them and the virtues of this product, and it sells. It's kind of a souvenir of the Santa Clara Valley. Then value-added products. Okay, so we dry apricots, and on the farm we actually have a candy kitchen where we also put chocolate on them. So that's a value-added product. Making jam out of our fruit is another value-added product. This is another specialty product. It's called sugar plums, old-fashioned sugar plums. Now, this is something that is kind of unique, and not too many people know what a true sugar plum is. Well, we have an old family recipe. It's basically a prune that's stuffed with apricots and honey and nuts, and we sell it. It's a great holiday item. And again, in the back of this box, we're selling nostalgia. We're selling something special and unique, especially for the holidays. And we talk about how the sugar plum was a favorite of Benjamin Franklin and Ferdinand and Isabella, and the history of the sugar plums. Unique varieties. Now, this is kind of my passion. We have been actually developing new varieties that we grow, so they're unique. So we have kind of developed a niche market for it, and exclusives. One of the varieties, like in the upper left, is something called Baby Crawford. We kind of rescued that from the UC Davis selection that was being tested for market fruit, but it didn't have enough color, it didn't have enough size, but it had tremendous flavor. So now it's my signature peach. It's fantastic flavor, and we grow it just for its flavor. On the upper right, this is called a Silk Road nectarine. It's actually nectarine, looks like an apricot, but it's golden orange throughout. There's no red on it, and it's originally came from Central Asia, and then we did some more breeding, and we developed this it's very, very unique coloration and very good tasting. The one on the lower right is a nectarine called Raspberry Red. It's infused with a lot of red, and it has kind of a rich raspberry flavor, something else we developed ourselves. So if somebody wants to buy these things, and this one was a great hit at the farmers market. One of the I think he was a chef from the Beverly Hilton, came by, and he saw those, and he says, I want them. And we didn't have any more except some seconds. They were all nicked and pockmarked, and he said, I'll give you $50 for those, because he had a special recipe that he wanted to use those for. And then lastly, these are green gauge plums. They are the most popular market plum in Europe, but they're rarely grown in the United States. And we have the largest commercial planting, I believe, in the United States of these. These are excellent tasting, but nobody grows them in California. Kind of hard to grow, but we take that as a challenge. So those are just a few of the unique varieties. We have a whole collection of things that a lot of people don't grow, and there's people that if they want some of these special varieties, they have to come to us. Okay, this is another. We have collaborated with other small artisan producers and developed products that use our fruit. This is Revival Ice Cream in Monterey, and they've developed a fantastic. This is a pluot. It's a pluot sorbet, and they also make ice cream with our fruit. Sweet Dragon Baking Company in San Jose bakes our pies for us using our fruit. They make pies and galettes. And then there's a local brewing company in Morgan Hill. There's other brewing companies that we sell fruit to too, but this one is highlighted because it's a special fruit beer. They made a cherry beer with our cherries, and they have a nice label and everything. And we can't sell this in our store because we don't have a liquor license, but it's it's very popular, these fruit beers. And they also have apricot beer made with our apricots, and also peach beer. And then finally, this is just a kind of a picture of our farm stand. You can see the sign in the upper right. It says "Eat Local." That's kind of what we try to do. We try to find local delicacies and specialty items to carry in our store, and that differentiates our retail store, including our fresh fruit, of course, differentiates it from the regular supermarket. So people will come to find specialty products and unique products at our store. Okay, in conclusion, I'm just going to read this. The Valley of Heart's Delight was born of many aspirations gathered together in one ideal landscape. It came together and thrived. Individual families from all parts of the world created a collective culture that succeeded for a time, changed, and then it was gone. It was what Wallace Stegner called a brief Eden. Now, I have a list of a couple of books that I think are really good to check on. The first one is Passing Farms, Enduring Values, and it's by Yvonne Jacobson. And Yvonne Jacobson is Charlie Olson's sister. She was Stanford educated, and it's basically a big photo essay along with some collective stories and narratives. And some of the old historical photos that I have in my presentation came from her book. So I want to give her credit for that. The next one is by Stephen Stoll. He's a professor of history in Yale University, and he wrote, it's called The Fruits of Natural Advantage. He wrote a more prosaic look at how the California countryside has become industrialized. In other words, he refers to like the almond orchards in Central Valley as nut factories, and it's all very kind of sterile, as opposed to the study that was written by Anne Marie Todd, who was a professor of social science at San Jose State. It's called The Valley of Heart's Delight: Environment and the Sense of Place in the Santa Clara Valley. And her belief is that we have lost the sense of place as the Santa Clara Valley converted to or transitioned to Silicon Valley. The farm was part of a physical place. There was an emotional attachment to the land, and that's no longer the case. Most of our work is done in cyberspace now, which is not a physical place at all. It's just like Gertrude Stein said. She said, "There's no there for," she's referring to Oakland, but there's no there. And I think that's something that we've lost. So anyway, that's about it. I hope you found my talk informative, and I would like to entertain some questions now.
Great presentation, Andy.
Thank you.
I can't wait for those sugar plums.
Hi, Andy. I'm wondering, I'm surprised you didn't talk about the best ice cream, which is the Cherry Mariani, the vanilla ice cream with the cherries and the chocolate swirl in it. It's the best ice cream. I can't wait till it's out. I hope this coming spring.
Yeah, we should have that again. Yeah, that was outstanding ice cream. It's also made by Revival. And the reason why I didn't talk about it is because I can't talk about all the things. And also,
Sure.
I didn't have a photo of it. I had a photo.
You got to get one with you behind it, holding the ice cream. It is so good.
Thank you.
So I'll clear my
I
freezer.
think it's one of the best ice creams I've eaten too.
Yeah.
It's made with our Bing cherries, and it also has swirls of chocolate in it. And it's really quite good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they don't skimp on anything good in there. It really is well made. And do you have any of those? I'm going to Japan and they want those, Santa Clara Valley boxed apricots would make a great, great gift. Are you all sold out, or can I buy some from you?
No, we still have some, and you can call us.
Okay.
And, we'll take care of you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Lovely, lovely talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I'm reading some of the chat questions. I do have one question. What was the average size farm in those days for a family?
It depended on the kind of fruit that you grew. You could probably make a decent living on 5 acres of cherries, as long as you had a good crop. Usually you had to have at least 10 to 15 acres of apricots and probably 20 to 25 acres of prunes. And sometimes, they were a lot of the families diversified. So we had apricots, prunes, and cherries. And here in Morgan Hill, we had about 45 acres altogether. A lot of the orchards were much smaller than that, particularly in the heart of the valley, because in the old days it was very labor intensive, especially when you had to dry them and all that. So a lot of people did not want to cut off more than they could chew, basically. And so, but the average one was probably anywhere from say 7 or 8 acres to 50 acres.
Great. So one person is asking where is your orchard farm and how to make a reservation.
Oh, okay. First of all, we're located at 1615 Half Road in Morgan Hill. We're kind of right off the freeway from the Cochrane Road exit. And you can go to our website, www.andysorchard.com. Is that right? Yeah. And we have a map, and we have a lot of different details about our farm. And also these events are usually happen in the summertime, and we haven't really posted the dates as yet. And you can make reservations online, which is advisable. And also I can give you a hint that probably they will be on there in April because they sell out fairly quickly, and you'd want to see it and make your reservation right after you see when the dates are. Usually, like I say, the cherry tasting is usually Father's Day, and then probably the first week in July is the apricot tasting. Although there's other fruits themselves, that's kind of the fruit du jour at that time. And then later on we have peaches, nectarines, and plums.
Andy, is this going to be a good cherry year, do you think?
You know what the question is? I mean, the answer is I have no idea.
It's so cold.
There's so many things that can happen. Right now, the accumulation of chill is average to above average, so we're hopeful. But anything can happen. I mean, we can get a hot spell, and then it kind of negates a lot of the chill that
Like last year. Okay. And did you say that veggie farm in Gilroy is called Fate, F-A-T-E, and flower?
Spade and plow.
Oh, spade and plow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
They have
Thank
a website too, so you can check them out.
Thank you.
There's a couple of questions here in the chat.
So you have several people that said they used to work at your farm, which is interesting. Greg Horn said he worked there for 50 cents a bucket.
Yeah, that's about right. 50 cents a bucket is actually, I remember when picking apricots was 15 cents a bucket. And
Oh my gosh.
most people at that time, this was in the early 50s, excuse me, they would make maybe $10 or $15 a day. On the other hand, a loaf of bread only cost like 20 cents. So everything was different then. And but yeah, if you look at it that way, yeah, it seems really, really radical that those prices were so cheap. But now, we used to pay 50 cents a tray for cutting apricots, and now we pay $11 a tray.
Wow.
Okay, now should I read these other ones here that are beside? And the
There's
chat-
a lot about olives for some reason, but I'll let you read them if you'd like to.
Okay, let's see. So we'll start with. Okay, so you read from the top. Let's see, Andy, you did not mention Jared Farm. They are one of the oldest farms in Saratoga. Yeah, I couldn't mention everybody. They're actually good friends of mine. And I'm sorry I didn't. I tried to focus on the smaller farms that are trying to be economically viable, and ones that are, supposedly dirt farmers as opposed to gentleman farmers. If you have other means of income, like for example, there's a lot of new wineries in the South County, and they're basically they've been established by urban money. Maybe a .comer CEO has money and he wants to develop or create a nice winery and vineyards. Now they're doing an excellent job of saving agricultural land, but they're not dependent on the income of that land, as opposed to people like me and Spade and Plow and the Novakoviches. So that was my focus. Okay. What is the name of that ice cream? Is it available in any local grocery stores? No, it's called Revival Ice Cream. We sell it here, and it's an artisanal company. It's a very small company that makes ice cream in Monterey. So if you're ever on the Monterey Peninsula, it's on Alvarado Street in Monterey, or you can try and get some here. I try to sell only the ice creams that are made with our fruit, but they have one outstanding flavor called Bee's Knees, and it's basically a honey flavored ice cream. Vanilla ice cream is fantastic, so we carry that as well. So okay.
I did notice there's a question about a distribution list. How can they be on your mailing list?
They can go on the website, and there's actually a newsletter that we send out. Now, we're not sending it out right now because we're in a hiatus. We usually close in January and don't open again until mid-May when the fresh cherries come out. But we do have a place to sign up for the newsletter. And as soon as we probably start with the newsletter in April, when we start taking reservations for the events. And so that will be a good way to keep in touch with us and for us to keep in touch with them. Second quote, why Andy's instead of Mariani name? Oh, that's an interesting one. We used to be called Mariani Orchards. And my brother and I kind of split things because he wanted to kind of downsize his operation, and I wanted to go into a new direction. And so he wanted to keep the Mariani Orchards name. So when I split off, I didn't necessarily like Andy's Orchard name, but it's one way to differentiate the two. So that's what we did. Okay, Lisa Newman, to everyone. Thank you, Andy, for a comprehensive overview of the Valley of Heart's Delight history and your persistence. This is common, I guess. Persistence and excellence. Your hard work and collaboration with other farmers helps keep the fragile fabric alive, and that's great. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Here, here, woohoo! Absolutely.
Okay, are there any other questions or?
I see some hands up.
Shall I just go ahead? My son was trying to buy just a normal house, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And this summer, the prices were out of sight. So he ended up buying a farm instead in Moraga. He has 10.5 acres. He's what you would call a gentleman farmer. The two of them, he and his wife, both work normal jobs. My son is an attorney and his wife has a startup in a beekeeping company because they wanted to start raising bees on their farm. And she ended up as the marketing director. So she's working like 12 hours a day. So they need to hire people because they have 25 olive trees. They have an orchard. They have a winery. They have 4 goats. They are city folk from New York City and know nothing about any of this other than they know that I live in Saratoga and have apricots and plums and peaches, and I make my own jam and whatnot. And I have a dryer, so I dry a lot of fruit just for home use and gifts. But what advice would you give somebody who suddenly has 10.5 acres? Most of it is vertical on a hillside. Where should they go for advice? How do they hire people?
Donna, you should move over there and help them take care of their farm.
Oh, I just
No,
go and take care of my 2.5-year-old grandson there.
Okay, I think the first step would be to talk to the agriculture department there. I guess it's in Contra Costa County. Is that where Moraga
Yes.
is?
Yes.
Okay, and Brentwood is a large agricultural area east of there, and they have really good farm advisors. And I don't know where they're going to get people, contacts to actually help them run the farm. That's very hard to do. Labor is extremely difficult to find. I have a labor force that lives on the farm here, and some of them have been several generations of the same family, and they know the farm as much as I do. They know if I ask them to go pick some baby Crawford cherries, baby Crawford peaches, they know exactly where to go because they know where they're at, they know how to pick it, and
Right.
it's multi-generational. So it's hard to develop that kind of relationship with the labor. But I would say that,
he's found nobody willing to work. and
Yeah.
it's not a matter of pay, it's finding people who know what they're doing.
exactly. And I think the best source would be the Brentwood area, because that's where farming is still fairly prominent, and see what they come up with. It is I can appreciate the task that they're facing, because we were lucky in that we have really good workers here that we've had for, people have worked here for 40 years. And then the children of that person they've been working here too. And that's really hard to find. Is there, if they had a housing on the farm, that would probably help attract somebody to live
They
there.
just moved in July, this last July, and in 2022, and they have room to build a house, and they can do that. They're allowed
Okay,
one house.
that would be something that they ought to consider.
Okay.
The only thing I would not suggest is that they quit their jobs and just start working on the farm.
Oh, no,
because
they
then
know they
become
can't.
dirt farmers,
And they did
they
find a
need-
place
they
to
need their
press
income.
olives.
Yeah.
Yeah, they found a community press for olives. That was a help.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But it's well, as you can appreciate, it's a lot of land and a lot of upkeep, and they have to get rid of the weeds because it's fire danger, and the costs just are astronomical.
Yeah, well, they took on a pretty major project there, and I'm sure that as an attorney, he's fairly intelligent, and he knows the issues, and I'm sure he'll be success. But I would suggest him to go somewhere in Contra Costa County, maybe talk to some of the farmers there, and maybe they have somebody that might be able to help.
Excellent.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? We have Joseph Berry has his hand up. Okay.
Hi.
It was surprising to hear how brief a time it was, maybe a couple of generations.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Valley of Heart's Delight lasted only about no more than 100 years. More like, I would say the tipping point came in the 50s, and if you consider that, it was probably like 80, 90 years. That's it. 8 or 9 decades. That's it. A brief Eden, as Wallace Stegner put it.
True.
Is there anybody else?
I'm looking for, I haven't seen a lot of praise. Everybody likes your presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Somebody named Joseph has their hand up.
Yeah, I couldn't call on him. So Joe, just just yell out what
Hi,
you're saying.
Annette, Andy, this is Joe Wary. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
Yeah, Andy, I wanted to ask you if you could put that slide up again. I had a couple books. I wanted to take a look at that book by that woman professor about the
okay. By the way, I sell it here in the store. Just to go to the last one. And we're gonna share. We're trying to work on it here, and okay. Her name is Anne Marie. Anne Marie Todd. She's it's the last one. Yeah. She's a professor at San Jose State, and the book is called The Valley of Hearts Delight, and several books are named that, but then it's subtitled The Environment and Sense of Place in the Santa Clara Valley. And you know, I took a lot of social science in college, and it really hit me. I mean, the rhetorical history and the scientific analysis that she went through, and it's scholarly, it's really well documented, it's an excellent study.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
if there's no more questions, I want to thank Andy for just a wonderful presentation and to remind everybody that this recording will be on our website, www.saratogahistory.com, in about 3 days. So you could check back if you want to hear it again. But other than that, I just say it was a wonderful, wonderful presentation, Andy. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Annette. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you.